Hi, hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Today we will discuss William Shakespeare's play Antony and Cleopatra. Antony and Cleopatra, composed around 1606 or 1607, and I first published in 1623 in the first folio. William Shakespeare, 1564-1616. Title and genre. Antony and Cleopatra is one of Shakespeare's greatest tragedies, blending history, romance, and political intrigue. The structure of the work. The play is divided into 5 acts, written in iambic pentameter, and employs a mixture of blank verse and prose. Its complex structure weaves together personal passions with the grand sweep of historical events. Shakespeare's sources for the play. Shakespeare drew extensively on Plutarch's work Parallel Lives, particularly the life of Mark Antony, to construct the narrative, while also infusing it with imaginative drama and a poetic invention. The date of composition. It is generally believed to have been composed around 1606 or 1607 during a period when Shakespeare was deeply engaged with classical themes and historical material. Now let's analyze the background of the work. Historical context, first of all. The play dramatizes the real-life relationship between the Roman general Mark Antony and Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt, during the final years of the Roman Republic. It reflects the political turbulence and shifting power dynamics of the late Roman world. Cultural and literary context. Set against the backdrop of Rome's imperial ambitions and Egypt's exotic allure, Antony and Cleopatra reflects a Renaissance fascination with the classical world and the contrasting cultures of East and West. The play explores themes of honor, duty, and personal passion, issues that resonated with early 17th century audiences. Shakespeare's approach. Unlike his strictly historical dramas, Shakespeare imbues the narrative with a rich emotional texture, emphasizing the personal conflicts and tragic dimensions of its protagonists. His portrayal of Cleopatra, in particular, broke with traditional depictions, offering a complex, multi-dimensional female character. Now let's analyze the summary of the work. Antony and Cleopatra recounts the doomed love affair between Mark Antony, a triumph of Rome, and Cleopatra, the enchanting queen of Egypt. As Antony becomes increasingly torn between his duties in Rome and his irresistible passion for Cleopatra, the political landscape shifts dramatically. Act first and a second. The play opens by establishing Antony's reputation as a brilliant military leader and a man of extravagant pleasures. His affairs with Cleopatra, full of sensuality and drama, is introduced again the backdrop of growing political challenges in Rome, where Octavius Caesar is consolidating power. Act 3. The conflict deepens as Antony's divided loyalties lead to military and personal setbacks. His extravagant lifestyle and emotional turmoil create tension with his Roman allies, while Cleopatra's influence over him grows ever stronger. Act 4 and 5. As the struggle for power escalates, Antony's fortune declines. The climatic battle between Rome and Egypt set the stage for the final tragic outcomes. There is the suicides of both Antony and Cleopatra. Their deaths symbolize the collapse of an era and the triumph of political ambition over passionate love. Now let's analyze the characters. First of all, we have Mark Antony, a charismatic Roman general and one of the tribes. Antony is depicted as both a great warrior and a man ruled by his passions. His internal conflict, torn between his Roman honor and his love for Cleopatra, is central to the tragedy. Next we have Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt. Cleopatra is portrayed as an intelligent, seductive, and a complex ruler. Her personal charm, wit, and a political acumen make her both a powerful monarch and a captivating lover whose influence over Antony is as much a political force as it is a romantic one. Next we have Octavius Caesar. The ambitious and calculating future first emperor of Rome, Caesar represents order and rising power of a new political regime. His eventual triumph marks the end of the Roman Republic and underscores the inevitable clash between personal passion and statecraft. Now the supporting characters. Barbus is Antony's loyal friend and confidant, whose reflections often serve as a chorus to the unfolding tragedy. Next we have Lepidus, Ventidius, and other military and political figures. They provide insight into the broader political landscape and the consequences of Antony's divided loyalties. The next characters, Cleopatra's attendants, for example, Charmian and Eras. They enrich the depiction of the Egyptian court and help illuminate Cleopatra's multifaceted personality. Now let's analyze the main themes in the work. First of all, love versus duty. The play's central tension lies in Antony's struggle between his personal passion for Cleopatra and his responsibilities as a Roman leader. This conflict raises questions about the cost of unchecked desire and the nature of honor. The next theme, East versus West. Antony and Cleopatra contrast the opulent, decadent world of Egypt with the disciplined, pragmatic values of Rome. The clash between these cultures symbolizes a broader conflict between emotion and reason, extravagance and austerity. The next theme, the nature of power. Political ambition and the transient nature of power are recurring themes. Both Antony and Cleopatra are caught in a web of personal and political forces, suggesting that power is as ephemeral as it is intoxicating. The next theme, fate and self-destruction. The tragic downfall of both the protagonists is portrayed as inevitable, a convergence of personal flaws and external pressures. Their deaths reflect the destructive potential of passion when it defies the demands of duty and order. Image and illusion. The play is rich in a symbolism and a dramatic irony, with the characters often masking their true intentions. Cleopatra's public persona versus her private vulnerability exemplifies the theme of appearance versus reality. Now the setting of the book, Rome. The Roman setting is portrayed as a realm of order, military discipline and political ambition. It symbolizes the rational, law-bound world that eventually prevails over personal indulgence. Next, Egypt. In a stark contrast, Egypt is depicted as a land of lush beauty, sensuality and exoticism. The opulent, almost decadent atmosphere of Cleopatra's court underlines the emotional and aesthetic dimensions of the play, providing a vivid backdrop for the unfolding romance and a tragedy. Duality of settings. The contrasting settings underscores the central conflicts of the play, that is, between the public and private, order and chaos, and the conservative values of Rome versus the liberating excesses of Egypt. Now, the critical reception and interpretations of the play. Complexity and ambiguity. Critics have long admired Antony and Cleopatra for its intricate portrayal of its protagonists, whose passions and personalities defy simple categorizations. The play's ambiguity, particularly in the portrayals of Cleopatra as both a ruthless ruler and a tragic lover, has invited diverse interpretations over the centuries. The next area of criticism is in political and psychological dimensions. Many scholars explore the play as a commentary on political power and the inherent instability of empires. Antony's decline is often read as a metaphor for the downfall of the Roman Republic, while the psychological depth of his inner conflict offers insight into the human condition. Next, feminist readings. Cleopatra has been a focal point for feminist criticism, with some viewing her as a powerful, resourceful leader who defies traditional gender roles, while others see her as a tragic figure undone by societal expectations and personal vulnerabilities. Next, stylistic and structural criticism. The play's mixture of grand historical narrative with intimate lyrical passages has been praised for its poetic complexity. However, some critics have noted structural irregularities and tonal shifts that challenge a straightforward interpretation, suggesting that the play's beauty lies in its layered and sometimes contradictory nature. Now, the legacy of the work. Antony and Cleopatra continues to be a subject of a scholarly debate and is frequently staged by modern theatre companies. Its exploration of themes like love, power, and identity remains relevant, and its richly drawn characters continue to inspire both academic analysis and popular admiration. Now let's go to the detailed summary of the work. Act first, setting the stage in Rome and Egypt. The play opens by establishing the volatile political climate following the Roman Civil War. Mark Antony, one of Rome's triumvirs, is portrayed as a man of both great military powers and extravagant passion. Although his official duties call him to maintain order and honor in Rome, Antony's personal life is dominated by his central and a consuming love for Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt. Antony is torn between his responsibilities in Rome and his indulgent lifestyle in Egypt. He is depicted as increasingly distracted by pleasure, making his political and military decisions erratic. Cleopatra is introduced as a charismatic, witty, and seductive ruler whose charm and courtly splendor captivate Antony. Her ability to switch between regal dignity and passionate playfulness sets the tone for her dynamic relationship with him. Meanwhile, the rising power of Octavius Caesar in Rome, who represents order and ambition, begins to contrast sharply with Antony's indulgent behavior. This contrast hints at the eventual clash between personal passion and a political duty. Now moving on to Act Second, deepening the personal and political divide. In Act 2, the tension between Antony's personal desires and his public responsibilities grows more pronounced. Antony's time in Egypt is marked by sumptuous feasts, extravagant celebrations, and passionate encounters with Cleopatra. His infatuation with her increasingly alienates him from his Roman allies and undermines his authority. Antony's lavish lifestyle in Egypt, with its exotic splendor and essential pleasures, is contrasted with the strict, disciplined order of Rome. This setting reinforces the theme of East versus West, as well as the conflict between emotional excess and political restraint. Cleopatra not only seduces Antony with her charm, but also wields significant political power. Her influence over him becomes evident as she deftly uses her wit and allure to keep him enthralled, even as his responsibilities in Rome beckon. Even as Antony revels in his passionate escapades, news from Rome and the ambitions of Octavius Caesar begin to underscore the unstable political landscape. Antony's divided focus hints at the looming disaster as his personal intelligence starts to weaken his command. Act 3. The crisis of loyalty and shifting fortunes. Act 3 is the turning point of the play where the personal and political crises converge. Antony's divided loyalties come under severe strain as he is pulled in different directions by his love for Cleopatra and the pressing demands of Roman politics. Antony's decision to split his forces, devoting some to his Egyptian intelligences and other to the Roman cause, results in strategic errors. His military setbacks begin to manifest, casting doubt on his ability to govern effectively. Tensions escalate as Octavius Caesar capitalizes on Antony's indecision and extravagance. The power struggle between these two Roman leaders intensifies, setting the stage for the eventual civil conflict. As Antony's fortunes wane, Cleopatra's role becomes even more ambiguous. While she continues to exude charm and sensuality, her actions also suggest a shrewd political awareness. The complexity of her character deepens as she navigates between genuine affection and a strategic maneuvering. Now moving on to Act 4, the downfall begins, battles and betrayals. In Act 4, the consequences of Antony's internal conflicts become all too clear. The combined effects of political infighting, military defeats, and personal betrayal brings the tragic elements of the narrative into sharper focus. Antony's inability to reconcile his dual commitments result in a rapid decline in his power. His personal indulgences have alienated many of his supporters, while his military setbacks embolden his rivals. Octavius Caesar's forces gain the upper hand, and the conflict between Rome and Egypt intensifies. Antony's struggle to maintain control leads to critical military engagements that foreshadows his impending downfall. Amid the chaos of battle, Antony is haunted by inner turmoil. His passionate attachment to Cleopatra, once a source of strength, now becomes a liability, fueling his indecision and contributing to his tragic isolation. Now moving on to Act 5, the climax and a tragic resolution. The final act brings the intertwined fates of Antony and Cleopatra to a dramatic and a tragic conclusion. The collapse of Antony's power is matched by the disintegration of his personal world, culminating in a series of irreversible events. As the conflict reaches its peak, Antony suffers a decisive military defeat. The relentless advances of Octavius Caesar's force leave him with a little choice but to retreat, and his position deteriorates rapidly. Facing overwhelming defeat, Antony's personal despair intensifies. In a series of emotionally charged decisions, he ultimately chooses death over further dishonor. His suicide marks the climax of his internal and external struggles. Cleopatra, deeply in love with Antony, yet aware of the impossibility of reclaiming the past, is left to confront her own fate. In the aftermath of Antony's death, with her empire crumbling and the future uncertain, Cleopatra chooses to end her life rather than be paraded as a trophy in a Roman triumph. The deaths of Antony and Cleopatra signal not only the personal tragedy of two star-crossed lovers, but also the end of an era, the collapse of the old Roman Republic, and the dawn of a new political order under Octavius Caesar. Now let's analyze the critical reception and interpretations of the play. Complex characterization. Critics have long admired Antony and Cleopatra for its richly drawn, complex characters. Antony is portrayed as both heroic and deeply flawed, while Cleopatra emerges as a multifaceted figure, both a seductive ruler and a tragic victim of circumstance. Political and psychological dimensions. The place in the play of political power and personal emotion has inspired numerous interpretations. Scholars analyze Antony's downfall as a metaphor for the collapse of the Roman Republic, and they examine how internal conflicts reflect broader themes of order versus chaos. Feminist and post-colonial readings. Modern critics have explored the portrayal of Cleopatra through feminist and post-colonial lenses. Her depiction as both powerful and vulnerable, as well as the play's portrayal of the cultural clash between Rome and Egypt, continue to generate discussion regarding gender dynamics and imperialism. Tonal shifts and structure. Some critics note that the play's structure, that is, shifting between grand historical narrative and an intimate personal drama, can be uneven, yet it contributes to its overall complexity. The oscillation between epic battles and tender introspective moments is seen as one of the play's strengths, mirroring the volatile nature of its central characters. Now let's analyze the main chords from the play. First one. Let Rome in Tiber melt, and the wide arch of the reigned empire fall. Here is my space. In Act First, Scene First, Antony expresses his willingness to let the Roman Empire collapse for the sake of his love for Cleopatra. This chord reveals his deep emotional commitment and the intensity of his passion. It also foreshadows the tension between duty and desire that underlies the play. Now the second chord. Age cannot wither her, nor custom stale her infinite variety. In Act Second, Scene Second, Enobarbus praises Cleopatra's enduring allure and ever-changing charm. His description highlights her power to captivate and fascinate not just Antony, but all around her. This line has become iconic as a symbol of timeless, unpredictable beauty. Now the next chord. The breaking of so great a thing should make a greater crack. In Act 4, Scenes First, this is spoken after Antony's death, reflecting on the magnitude of the loss. The speaker believes that such a powerful man's fall should have caused a more dramatic disruption in the world. It underscores the tragic grandeur of Antony's demise. Now the next quote. I am dying, Egypt, dying. In Act 4, Scene 15, Antony speaks these words to Cleopatra as he is fatally wounded. The repetition reflects both a physical weakness and an emotional sorrow. This line captures the tragic intertwining of the love and a death. Now the next quote. Give me my robe, put on my crown, I have immortal longings in me. In Act 5, Scene 2, Cleopatra prepares for death, imagining a divine reunion with Antony. Her mention of immortal longings reflects her belief in a transcendent love that defies mortality. It gives her suicide a sense of dignity and a grandeur. Now the next quote. His delights were dolphin-like. They showered his back above the element they lived in. In Act 5, Scene 2, Cleopatra reminiscences about Antony using a poetic metaphor to describe his brilliance and his superiority. The image of dolphins rising above water suggests how Antony stood above ordinary men. It contributes to the mythical aura surrounding him even in death. Moving on to the next quote. There is beggary in the love that can be reckoned. In Act 4, Scene 1, Antony suggests that true love cannot be measured or calculated. He dismisses the idea of quantifying affection, emphasizing the depth of his passion for Cleopatra. The quote speaks to the play's exploration of extravagant, overwhelming love. Now the next quote. Oh, withered is the garland of the war, the salty's folly is fallen. In Act 4, Scene 14, Cleopatra laments Antony's collapse from greatness after a defeat. The garland of the wall symbolizes his military glory now lost. Her mourning marks a pivotal moment in his decline and the tragic arc of the play. Now moving on to the next quote. This was the noblest Roman of all. It is adapted from Julius Caesar, but invoked in spirit by Cleopatra in her eulogy for Antony. Though not a literal quote from Antony and Cleopatra, Cleopatra's sentiments echo this idea in her praise of Antony. She elevates him above all other Romans, praising his courage and nobility. This parallels earlier Roman tragedies and adds to the mythic quality of his character. The next quote. In time, we hate that which we often fear. In Act 4, Scene 3, Cleopatra speaks to the link between fear and hatred. It suggests that repeated exposure to fear can turn admiration or love into resentment. This line points to the psychological tension in her relationship with Antony and Rome. Now the next line. The triple pillar of the world transformed into a trumpet's fool. In Act 4, Scene 1, the character Philo criticizes Antony for becoming infatuated with Cleopatra. Once a pillar of the Roman triumvirate, Antony is now reduced to a lover under Cleopatra's spell. The line reflects Rome's disdain for emotional vulnerability and a decadence. Now the next quote. Mine honesty and I begin to square. In Act 2, Scene 7, Baba speaks this as he starts to doubt the moral clarity of his actions and the loyalty. His conscience conflicts with the loyalty to his general, reflecting the ethical dilemmas that haunt many characters. This moment hints at his eventual disillusionment and a tragic fate. Now the next chord. Mechanic slaves with the greasy aprons, rules and hammers shall uplift us to the view. In Act 5, Scene 2, Cleopatra imagines being paraded by common people after capture. The image of artisans displaying her reduces her royal dignity to a spectacle. It shows her fear of humiliation and a loss of her regal identity. Now the next chord. The nobleness of life is to do this when such a mutual pair and such a twain can do it. In Act 1, Scene 1, Antony describes the noblest joy of life as mutual love and union. The emphasis on mutuality shows his belief in equality in a passion with Cleopatra. It contrasts with Roman ideals of stoic detachment and power. Now the next chord. She shall be buried by her Antony, no grave upon the earth shall clip in it a pair so famous. In Act 5, Scene 2, Caesar, after Cleopatra's death, acknowledges the legendary status of the lovers. Despite being the political opponent, he recognizes the tragic magnificence. The line elevates their love to an eternal narrative of passion and a downfall.